We have Thanksgiving weekend. It was all weekend, but some people do their dinners on Sunday so they can travel easier. And many of us do it on Monday, which is a holiday here for Thanksgiving. I was lucky. I had Thanksgiving dinner with my family yesterday and going over and having more leftover turkey, actually, a hot turkey sandwich today. I get two. So, Thanksgiving in Canada is one of those stories I've just always loved. I'm not sure exactly what the story is, but when I was in that little one-room country school, it's the one I learned and the one that I hold as a treasure in my life. We learned that when the pioneers came over from Europe, my background is England, and many came from France as well. But the Europeans in particular came, discovered America. I guess apparently they were looking for the spice route in China, and they thought they were going around to it, and then they bumped into this land with nothing much on it. No spices here, no glory. They did find, even though they tried to say they discovered it. Now, this is silly. They might have discovered it for them, but certainly they did not discover it as a new land, which is what they like to tout in the history books, of course. The Indigenous people were already here, our First Nations, our Native people. They were already here for a long time, long time. So they were our first people. But we showed up on the scene from Europe, across the waters, looking for spices in China. Oh, and here we were. It was a long, hard run across the ocean in those ancient ships, of course. No luxury there. It was not easy. And you could only bring so much. So I know with our ancestors, they brought the tea services, for instance, because the gals that got married to the men that came over really did have education. And with that education, they had all the finishing schools as well, and the pouring tea. So they brought their china with them for one of the things, and some of the different plants like lilacs and special seeds that they wanted to be able to have with them. It was a very ingenious time. Now, when they arrived, it was pretty hard. Then they would have come in, of course, into a Canadian winter. Our Canadian winters are hard. We have it really easy now, even though there was a 4-foot drift at the back of my car last winter. We've got all the machinery, but they came with nothing to these 10 and 12 foot of snow in the forests and have to cut down the trees and build a house. It's amazing. And how the Indigenous people survived and lived with their teepees and so on, that they could pick up and move because they were nomadic in many ways. It's fascinating studying history. But this is Thanksgiving, and I hadn't quite realized that Thanksgiving wasn't all around the world till I had to, oh yes, this was in the New World. Huh. So people who have come here from other countries didn't know what we were celebrating. But anyhow, in my understanding, the Native people, the Indigenous people, actually helped the pioneers survive. They taught them so many survival skills, and they taught them which foods and to grow the three sisters. Three sisters are 3 vegetables that when combined together make a complete protein. And they would add meat and berries when they were available. But those 3, the squash, the corn, and the beans, the 3 of them are called the 3 sisters in the Indigenous story, and in the actual Indigenous actual eating as well. Now, the Indigenous people had for centuries come together at harvest time to celebrate and to make their trades and get everything they need, because each tribe would have, a specialty in something different. And so they could bring their baskets, their foods, their their clothing that they had made, whatever, and have a potlatch, which my understanding of a potlatch would be almost like our flea markets, our markets for trade. And they were also able to tell stories and get their young people married off to another tribe here and there. It served a lot of purposes, and I always like this idea of the harvest gathering. So bringing it to our Thanksgiving dinner is turkey and cranberries, squash, sometimes corn, although we have our corn a little bit earlier, and potatoes and so on, but pumpkin pie, which is a squash family, and the beans, of course, a pot of brown beans, baked beans, with the tomatoes around. Beautiful foods, beautiful foods. It's very abundant. So we have our pie, our turkey, this beautiful dinner, and it's all just at the same time as this right now, where you see I'm back into a little bit of a warmer sweater because the weather's getting quite cool now. In fact, I'm quite chilly. I'm going to have to put the heat on. It's that wonderful celebration time because we know winter is coming. Celebrating the harvest is amazing. It's wonderful. We come together in community, family, and the old days, it was the natives and the settlers coming together before they got into killing each other off. I mean, I hate the history of where we went from there, but I love the celebration of foods and the harvest coming together. The Indigenous people had held those communal feasts for decades before we ever got here, and they brought it together with ritual and dance, all of the spiritual stuff that brings a people together, and then food and laughter and stories. What are your stories? Your Thanksgiving stories? I know, pumpkin pie, whipped cream, or maybe a scoop of ice cream on it. That's a lot of my story. My mom was a wonderful baker. She was a good cook, but when she came to baking, it was unbelievable. And the final part, of course, to not be forgetting, is the stories, the coming together and the stories around reasons for giving thanks, the reasons for bringing story, the reasons for coming together to celebrate the harvest before we pack ourselves inside for the winter. I hope that gets your reflections going around Thanksgiving. And it is 20 to 5 here. So shortly be time for dinner. And I hope that you enjoy a wonderful dinner celebration with your family and friends. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Coach Sandra, Compassionate Queen of Straight Talk, here to celebrate. All the best.